Hi, I'm Kyle Freeburn, the MBA Marketing Association President. We are here with MBA Insider Conversations, Practical Knowledge Passed Along. This podcast series features students in the class here at BYU, the MBA program, who are best in class, talking on a variety of topics that can help students prepare and ultimately nail their dream job and be successful in their post-MBA endeavors. Welcome to MBA Insider Conversations, Practical Knowledge Passed Along, brought to you by the MBA Student Association. I'm Kyle Freeburn, here today with Ronell, our Executive Vice President in the MBA Marketing Association. Ronell, thank you for being here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk with you.
Well, Ronell is something that I've really been impressed with Ronell, with the things that you do, is your ability to network and to really get a relationship built and have that trust established to the point of being able to explore other professional opportunities or get information about a company or just a whole myriad of things. Could you go ahead and walk us through what you think are critical skills and that perspective of a good networker and what makes that successful?
Definitely. When I think about networking and my impressions coming into the MBA program and how important it is to have those skills, the first thing that comes to mind is the ability to really be able to relate to people. Going into a conversation where how do you get information out of somebody and be able to take that information and generate some common interest where you can talk about things. And when I think about, that's one of the first things that comes to my mind when I go into a networking situation. And I think that's benefited me in a lot of ways. I'm very open. I'm very open to talk about myself and talk about things that I'm interested in, and I think that helps when you're approaching something that you don't know. And they like to see that openness. And I think a lot of times in the MBA program we're so focused on, well, I want to ask questions and really try to think in generating relationships that way, but we miss out on the opportunity to share about ourselves. And so that's one of the things, that's the first thing I think that comes to mind when I think about networking. The second thing is just being willing to talk about things not really focused on your career so much, but also getting to know people personally. They'll get to the opportunity to talk to you about, well, what are you interested in? Because if they like you in that personal way, it will naturally move to that process of, okay, so I like what I'm hearing, so now what do you want to accomplish from a professional standpoint? You know, where do you see yourself in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Why are you doing marketing? And then, and that is something that I've realized as I've moved through the process. Last year when I went to National Black, the first year, it was interesting to see how that was an important process as I approached different booths and talking to people, and then getting them now to champion me as I move on through the process this year. So going back now to National Black this year was the same thing. Being able to do that and go back and people that I saw, they were happy to see me, giving me hugs, and that personal relationship was established.
Well, who's not going to want to give you a hug, first of all? but second of all, could you just walk us through an example that you have of when you were able to build that relationship, just a nice casual relationship where they think, you know, I don't know Ronell, but I like him. I want to know more and possibly open up professional opportunities and see if he's interested. You know, I think that's such an important perspective, and you've hit on that, and I think it's great that you have. Just so we can understand a little better, how do you build that comfortable, casual relationship, and at what point does that then transition into, oh, by the way, I'm interested in Microsoft? You know, walk us through that. I think it's a skill.
So last year when I entered the program, Microsoft, give an example, Microsoft is my number one choice, very focused on Microsoft. And so I spent the summer just really trying to understand the company and things like that, doing your background, your research. But then I was talking to a neighbor of mine, a guy who used to be a neighbor of mine, and I said, do you know anybody that I could talk to that's in product management, maybe coming from BYU, that I could, you know, hopefully build a relationship with and learn more about Microsoft? He's like, oh, I have a perfect person for you, Taylor Fisher. You know, so Taylor and I started talking over the summer. This is even before I started the MBA program. And so we got on the phone a couple of times and we just talked. And so I think the first thing that I remember doing was just sending an email and saying, hey, this is who I am. I'm starting the MBA program. I'm really interested in product management at Microsoft. You know, and I just kind of talked a little bit about my background and what I was interested in, and then set up a phone call. And we were able to, then I talked a little bit more about myself and said, hey, look, this is my background. You know, I've been in technology. I love the focus of technology. And I understand that you've been in technology for X amount of years. Tell me about your experience. And so I think the first thing was just telling them a little bit about myself, and then switching over now, let me hear about you. Let me tell me about your experience. And I've seen that process actually work through multiple situations. With the VP of brand development for Bath & Body Works, I have no desire to go and make lotions. You know, my wife would probably love it, but not my first desire. But the point is, I did the same process with him. I told him a little about myself, and then I went and said, oh, now tell me about your history. You know, what have you done that's helped you to be successful? And people, I think, love to talk about themselves. And when they find something that's really intriguing, really wanting to know, that opens up that willingness. And then that interest, you know, the conversation moves past being 30 minutes to like an hour, where you're talking not just about, well, what do I want to do, about what has this person done, and then they come back, well, what do you want to do?
Right.
You know, what are your passions? And that is the next open door that you're hoping for, right? It's a natural flow to saying, now I am looking at this. I want to do marketing. The reason I wanted to talk to you, for instance, with the guy from Bath and Body Works, was just to understand how you've grown in your career and how you've advanced to a level where you're at, where you're doing brand development for your company. And so, and then his willingness now is, you know, what can I do?
Right.
What can I do to help you?
Right.
I see you have great ability, you have a lot of talents in the marketing area. What can I do to help you to advance your career?
Great. Well, that sounds like an awesome opportunity that you've been able to build for yourself through networking. What do you think, when you're looking at the BYU MBA program, you've had a lot of experience with a lot of students, and I know you've talked to a lot of students about the importance of networking. What do you think one of the big obstacles that the typical BYU MBA student needs to overcome, or the greatest opportunity for growth in terms of networking?
As I look at it, I think one of the biggest obstacles is the fear of coming across as not being natural and actually being sincere in why they're doing it. I think a lot of people view networking as it's fake,
right?
And there's no sincerity behind it. And I think that's false for me, because I think the whole purpose of it is to get out there and to get to know people.
Right.
And if you really are sincerely trying to get to know them on a personal level, then how can it be fake?
Right.
Because the ultimate approach is first to build a friendship, and then to move past that friendship and hoping that that person is willing to say, hey, I know this person. What can I do to help you? And I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. And I think the second thing is the lack of ability, the know-how of how to do it. I think we're really comfortable being around people that we know, but getting outside of that box, so to speak, outside of our comfort zone, there's hesitation to do that. And there's lack of experience in doing that because we're so used to being around familiar, I guess, environments.
Right. So what would you say? Let's say I'm a student and I hear this podcast, or I hear this cast, and I think, you know, networking is huge, but I don't feel like I am very good at that naturally. It's hard for me. What would you suggest? How can I improve this skill? You talk, it's a skill, it needs to be natural, build that friendship. Is there anything that I can do to kind of increase that natural ability that I can see right now that you have? If it's not natural, how do you actually increase that?
I think first and foremost is taking that, it's kind of a risk, right? Getting out there and actually practicing, and not from them saying, I'm just going to go meet somebody that's random, but really say, okay, here's Kyle Freeburn. I've never met him in my entire life. I want to learn more about him. So what do you do? So from my perspective, it's getting out there first and going and meeting somebody that you really have a sincere desire to develop a relationship with, and then taking the steps to do that. So what do you do in a natural course of any type of engagement like that? You know, you don't even have to do any research. Just go up and have a nice, comfortable conversation, and go walk through those steps. You know, learn about where they're from, their history, what their likes and dislikes are, and open up that door that way. I think that's the first step. And that is, in a way, is practicing. But maybe find 5 people during the, you know, if you're first year, second year, if you have a problem with it in this area, find 5 people that you can do that with in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And see how much you remember. Can you go back then later on and say, I remember you talking about this, and so I want to talk more about this because I've really had some thoughts about this. I even saw that, I'll give you an example, I saw it last week when I was at Walmart at their brand camp. I met about probably 50 people from different schools, and I made a point to sit down and remember their names, where they're from, and what things they've done, where they did their internships. So, and that's part of that, getting to know people, because then that shows, hey, this person is really interested in me, and that then allows them to say, okay, I feel something here, because that interest that you show.
Well, you brought up the importance of being genuine, and it sounds like the secret to being a good networker is just having a genuine interest in knowing people on a deeper level. And if you want to practice it, you just need to go out and build that connection and practice being able to get to that connection quickly in interaction. It seems like you've definitely had that success in doing that, and thank you for sharing how we can get a little closer to that and improve that skill.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a great opportunity for me to talk about it.